In September 2024, an Argentine rancher's chainsaw unearthed a concrete structure while clearing land, revealing a hidden underground compound untouched for decades. This discovery in northern Argentina led to a police investigation that uncovered a reinforced building, the size of a large house, concealed within a hillside. The initial chamber contained German naval charts from April 1945, a radio transmitter, coded logbooks, and a metal locker stenciled with Corvette Captain Werner Hadlitch, U-977. Hadlitch was a U-boat commander whose submarine surrendered in Argentina on August 17, 1945, months after Germany's capitulation. Allied intelligence, suspicious of his delayed surrender en route, interrogated him extensively. Hadlitch claimed he had been submerged, unaware the war had ended, a story they disbelieved but couldn't disprove. He was released and, according to Argentine records, died in 1982. However, the unearthed compound, a fully equipped 1940s command post with long-term supplies, suggested a different narrative, hinting at Hadlitch's true mission and why British intelligence tirelessly pursued him for decades. To comprehend Hadlitch's Argentine destination, one must examine the final weeks of the Third Reich. Werner Hadlitch, 34 at war's end, was a career naval officer since 1929, commanding U-977, a Type U-boat, since October 1944. His record was unremarkable. 2 confirmed merchant ship sinkings, several unconfirmed convoy attacks, and mostly Norwegian sea patrols. Not an ace or politically inclined, his file described him as technically competent, follows orders precisely, good under pressure, ideal for dangerous waters, but not a headline maker. U-977, commissioned in March 1943 and assigned to the 13th U-boat flotilla in Trondheim, Norway, had completed 7 mostly uneventful patrols by early 1945. Its 42-man crew, averaging 27, were Atlantic campaign veterans, skilled in stealth, evasion, and rationing. The boat was a reliable workhorse, largely undamaged. On March 24, 1945, Hadlitch received standard anti-shipping patrol orders for the North Atlantic, signed by WWII Command. However, crew members later reported a second, unlogged set of orders delivered by an unknown officer. Hadlitch denied their existence post-war, but evidence suggested otherwise. With the Reich crumbling, Soviets near Berlin, Allies across the Rhine, and the Kriegsmarine reduced to under 60 U-boats, Grand Admiral Dnitz prepared for surrender. Yet, certain Nazi elements planned for continuation, escape routes, and hidden assets to survive Allied occupation. U-977 departed Kiel on March 24 with full fuel, 12 weeks of provisions, and a crew believing they were hunting convoys off Newfoundland. The boat followed a standard route north through the Kattegat and west into the North Sea. On April 2, they received news of Hitler's death, and on May 8, Germany's unconditional surrender. Dnitz ordered all U-boats to surface and proceed to Allied ports. U-977 did not. Unbeknownst to his crew, Hadlitch had already decided against surrendering to the British or Americans. Their destination had been chosen months prior by those planning a prolonged conflict. What Hadlitch carried in his forward torpedo room, sealed in watertight containers and absent from any log, would explain British intelligence's 40-year pursuit. On May 10, 1945, 2 days after Germany's surrender, U-977, submerged 200 miles west of Ireland, gathered its crew. Hadlitch offered them a choice. Surface and face years in a POW camp, or continue south to Argentina, staying submerged as much as possible. After an hour, 16 men opted to surrender and were put ashore on the Irish coast that night. The remaining 26 voted to continue. What followed was one of U-boat history's longest submerged transits. Hadlitch navigated south through the Atlantic, deep during the day, surfacing only at night for battery recharge and ventilation. They avoided shipping lanes and maintained radio silence, running dark. The plan was to hug the African coast, steer clear of patrols, and cross the South Atlantic during the Southern Hemisphere winter, when Allied air patrols were less frequent. The 66-day journey covered over 7,500 nautical miles, mostly submerged or snorkeling. By July, food was scarce, 1 meal daily of canned rations and dried fish. Fresh water was rationed to half a liter per man. The air was foul with diesel fumes and body odor, leading to skin infections among several crewmen due to humidity. The chief engineer reported stern tube bearing issues, but surfacing for repairs was too risky. On July 12, they crossed the equator. By late July, they were off the Brazilian coast, submerged by day, moving only at night. Hadlitch navigated by dead reckoning and brief periscope observations, lacking updated charts, weather reports, or intelligence on Allied patrols. They operated blind, hoping to reach Argentine waters before fuel or provisions ran out. The boat's log, later examined by British intelligence, showed meticulous navigation and fuel management, with every course change and battery charge recorded. However, 3 entries were torn out, and several pages appeared rewritten, with different ink and unnaturally neat handwriting. Something had been removed from the official record, which Hadlitch never explained. On August 17, 1945, U-977 surfaced in Mar del Plata harbor, signaling Argentine authorities. The crew was emaciated, exhausted, and ill. The boat was filthy, low on fuel, and mechanically degraded, but intact. Hadlitch radioed that he had been submerged since May 10, unaware of the surrender, and now offered his boat to Argentina, a calculated lie, as the log clearly showed they received surrender orders on May 8. Argentine authorities interned the crew and impounded the boat. Within 48 hours, British and American intelligence officers arrived in Buenos Aires, demanding access, suspecting U-977 had transported high-ranking Nazis. They interrogated Hadlitch for 6 weeks, but he never deviated from his story. No passengers, no gold, no documents, just a crew avoiding capture. Allied searches, including X-raying the hull, yielded nothing. He was released in October 1945. What they didn't know was that Hadlitch had already contacted an Argentine officer who helped him vanish inland, and the safely hidden cargo had already been moved. The cargo's destination remained a secret until 2024, when a forensic accountant in Buenos Aires noted peculiar declassified Argentine banking records from 1946. The official investigation into U-977 closed in November 1945. The Allied conclusion. Hadlitch was a rogue commander fleeing capture, carrying no passengers or contraband. The boat was scuttled off Mar del Plata in January 1946. Hadlitch received Argentine residency and vanished from intelligence files. British suspicions lingered, but lacked evidence. Hadlitch's story became a footnote in books on Nazi escape routes. He contributed to the myth with his 1952 memoir, U-Boat 977. 66 days underwater, claiming to be an apolitical officer who refused to surrender to avoid execution as a war criminal. The book, a modest seller, reinforced his cover story, detailing the journey but omitting cargo, passengers, or secret orders. Several investigators remained unconvinced. In 1947, British Mi-6 officer David Thornton reported suspicious U-boat arrivals in Argentina, noting U-977's ballast didn't match fuel consumption, suggesting heavy cargo in forward compartments. Thornton recommended continued surveillance of Hadlitch, but his report was filed away. Hadlitch lived quietly in Buenos Aires for 3 decades, working as a technical advisor for an Argentine shipping company, marrying in 1954, and having 2 children. He gave occasional interviews but avoided detailed questions about his journey. When pressed about the torn log pages, he blamed seawater for the 66-day transit. He cited determination and luck. He never wavered. In 1978, German journalist Klaus Fischer interviewed Hadlitch, then 67, about rumors of U-977 transporting Reich Chancellery documents. Hadlitch laughed, "If I brought Hitler's secrets to Argentina, do you think I'd be living in a 2-bedroom apartment?" Fischer believed him, publishing the interview in Der Spiegel. Hadlitch died in May 1982, officially of heart failure. His Buenos Aires Herald obituary described him as the last U-boat commander to surrender. His family held a small funeral no German officials attended. His estate included a modest pension, furniture, and a metal trunk donated to a maritime museum, its contents, uniforms, medals, photos, stored unexamined in a basement. For decades, Argentina's interior guarded its secrets, until the forest yielded one. The property where the compound was found changed hands 4 times between 1945 and 2024. In 1946, a Montevideo registered holding company, with no listed shareholders, bought it, dissolving in 1952. In 1953, it sold to an Argentine agricultural cooperative for cattle grazing. In 1978, a forestry company planted pines across much of the acreage. In 2019, Sebastian Morales, a rancher, purchased it. The remote site, 320 kilometers northwest of Buenos Aires near Pergamino, was 8 kilometers from the nearest paved road. The 450-hectare property, mostly forest and pasture, had no visible structures or utilities, appearing worthless except for timber and grazing, the perfect hiding spot. In 1998, historian Dr. Eduardo Sanz's book on Nazi assets in Argentina, based on declassified files and interviews, discussed rumors of 1940s safe houses for fugitive German officers. He identified 12 possible locations through suspicious property purchases by foreign nationals. The Pergamino property wasn't on his list. The holding company's registration obscured its German ties. Technology advanced. Satellite imagery became public. In 2015, a University of Buenos Aires team used archival aerial photos to search for hidden structures in known Nazi fugitive areas, finding only previously known abandoned buildings. The Pergamino site appeared as empty forest. The compound's concrete roof, covered by soil and vegetation, was invisible from above. Meanwhile, British intelligence files on U-977 remained classified. In 2003, some documents were released under the 50-year rule, but sensitive files on South American Nazi networks stayed sealed. Researchers saw references to ongoing investigations in Argentina, but names and locations were redacted. Hadlitch appeared in several documents, always with no current intelligence. Subject: deceased 1982. What a small circle knew was that Hadlitch had visited the Pergamino property twice yearly from 1946 until his death, an 8-hour drive from Buenos Aires. His family thought he consulted for shipping companies. The truth lay sealed in a hillside, awaiting a chainsaw. When investigators finally entered the compound in September 2024, the main chamber's contents directly linked to 3 other Nazi facilities in Argentina, revealing an unknown network. Sebastian Morales reported the German bunker to Pergamino police on September 14, 2024. The provincial and federal police were notified, and by September 16, a team from the National Institute of Anthropology and Historical Thought, led by Dr. Luca Vargas, arrived with ground-penetrating radar. Her Geo Radar Pro 16 system, imaging up to 10 meters deep, revealed a 35m x 18m complex built into the hillside with reinforced concrete walls, at least 6 interconnected chambers, and a 1.2m concrete roof covered by 2m of soil. The entrance, exposed by Morales, was a steel door welded shut from inside. Using a plasma cutter, the team breached it. On September 19, Dr. Vargas and 2 colleagues entered with respirators and portable lights. The air, though stale, was breathable, thanks to a well-designed ventilation system. The first chamber was a dust-covered common room with tables, chairs, a wood stove, and shelving. 3 framed German naval vessel photographs hung on a wall. A half-finished chess game sat on a table. The second was a communications room with a Telefunken radio transmitter on a workbench, connected to an antenna disguised as a dead tree above ground. Next to the radio were coded logbooks from August 1945 to March 1946. The codes were standard Kriegsmarine, but the messages used a secondary, more complex encryption. Dr. Vargas photographed everything and called for cryptographers. The third was a storage chamber. Crates of German military-issue canned food, medical supplies, fuel drums, and ammunition boxes. One crate held documents. Personnel files, technical manuals, navigation charts. Another contained currency. Argentine pesos, US dollars, and Swiss francs, totaling about $180,000 in 1945 value. A third held unexpected geological survey maps of Patagonia, marked with mineral deposits. The fourth was a dormitory with 8 bunks. Personal items, clothing, toiletries, books, remained on footlockers. One locker, stenciled KKKPW Hadlitch, contained naval dress uniforms, an Iron Cross medal, and a leather journal in German covering August 1945 to February 1946, which Dr. Vargas handled with gloves and archived. The fifth chamber, described by Dr. Vargas as a planning room, had walls covered with maps of South America, Argentina, Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, marked with pins and connecting lines suggesting routes or networks. A desk held blueprints and construction plans for similar facilities, marking at least 11 other locations, some known Nazi sites, others new. The sixth chamber was a locked steel door with a mechanical combination lock, like a bank vault. On September 23, a locksmith spent 6 hours cracking it. What they found inside transformed the investigation. The vault contained 23 sealed metal containers, each with a serial number and a Nazi eagle stamp. Opening the first, forensic specialists found what explained British intelligence's 79-year search for Hadlitch. The federal police secured the site, bringing in specialists from Argentina's National Intelligence Secretariat, elevating the archaeological curiosity to a national security matter. The metal containers were transported to a secure Buenos Aires facility for analysis. Dr. Vargas was joined by cryptographers, forensic accountants, naval historians, and intelligence analysts. The first container opened on September 27, revealing over 400 pages of typed reports, handwritten notes, and operational orders in German, all classified Geheime Reichssach, secret Reich matter. Dating from March 1945 to April 30, 1945, Hitler's death, preliminary review indicated financial transfers, asset movements, and personnel relocation plans, some bearing high-ranking SS officer signatures. Dr. Hermann Wolf, a German historian specializing in Nazi documentation, confirmed their authenticity after 3 weeks of examination. Paper, ink, fonts, and signatures matched known 1945 Reich Chancellery and SS documents. Their content was significant. A systematic plan for continuity structures, hidden networks supporting fugitive Nazi officials. Hadlitch's journal, translated by Dr. Sofa Ramos, a linguist at the University of Buenos Aires, detailed his arrival in Mar del Plata, Allied interrogation, release, and meetings with German expatriates in Buenos Aires who helped establish the Pergamino compound. He wrote of cargo delivered as ordered and materials secured per protocol. On February 14, 1946, Hadlitch penned, "Final transfer complete. Documentation archived. My obligation fulfilled." The cryptography team, led by Dr. Carlos Mendez, tackled the radio logbooks. The base encryption was standard Kriegsmarine, but messages used a secondary cipher, a modified Enigma variant with a daily changing codebook. Decryption without the codebook would take years. However, one metal container held a surprise. An intact Enigma machine with rotor settings and codebook sheets for 1945 to 46. Using the codebook, Mendez's team decrypted 87 messages from the Pergamino compound between August 1945 and March 1946. These messages, sent to addresses in Paraguay, Chile, and Argentina, matching pins on the wall maps, were operational. Subjects relocated successfully, funds transferred as arranged, documentation secured. This was a communication network connecting multiple safe houses and fugitive cells across South America. The forensic accounting team traced wire transfers from Swiss banks to Argentine accounts totaling over $12 million, 1945 value, between 1945 to 48. Recipient accounts belonged to shell companies that purchased properties across Argentina and neighboring countries, including the Pergamino site. Some were known Nazi refuges, others were new discoveries. One document stood out. A typed list of 47 names, locations, and dates, titled Relocation Schedule Phase 2. Dr. Wolf cross-referenced the names with known Nazi fugitives. 12 matched confirmed individuals in South America post-war, 8 matched suspected but unfound fugitives, and 27 were unknown, later identified as mid-level SS officers, Gestapo agents, and Wehrmacht intelligence personnel, precisely the operatives to manage a clandestine network. The geological survey maps in the storage chamber revealed another dimension. Marked mineral deposits corresponded to tungsten, titanium, and uranium ore sites in Patagonia. Several documents discussed resource development and industrial capacity, clearly implying this was more than an escape network, it was an attempt to establish an economic base for a potential Fourth Reich. Whether this was delusional planning or a serious effort remained unclear, but the preparation was extensive. Physical evidence corroborated the documentary findings. The ammunition in the storage chamber included rounds for MP-40 submachine guns and Luger pistols, standard Wehrmacht weapons. Ballistic analysis showed several rounds had been fired, with impact marks on the concrete walls of an internal firing range. Someone had been training here. Food supplies, though German packaged, had purchase receipts from Buenos Aires, 1945-46, indicating the compound was supplied for months. DNA analysis on personal items from the dormitory yielded a partial genetic profile from a hair sample in Hadlitch's comb, confirmed by comparison with his grandson, who still lived in Buenos Aires. Hadlitch definitely used this facility. Other footlockers held items from at least 7 other individuals, none identifiable from available samples. But the final container, number 23, marked Nerve Commando Anten, Nerve Command Antenna, held the document that tied everything together and confirmed British intelligence's 79-year suspicion. Container 23 was opened on October 18, 2024, in the presence of Dr. Vargas, Dr. Wolf, and 2 Argentine Foreign Ministry representatives. Inside was a single, 16-page operational order, typed on Reich Chancellery stationery, dated March 20, 1945, and signed by Martin Bormann. Addressed to U-Boat Command Special Operations, the order outlined a plan codenamed Action Brücke, Operation Bridge. It explicitly instructed selected U-boat commanders to transport essential materials and selected personnel to designated South American locations. Materials included classified documents, financial instruments, and technical specifications. Personnel included intelligence operatives and administrative specialists, individuals capable of establishing and maintaining covert networks. The U-boats were to depart in March and April 1945, before Allied interdiction. Hadlitch was one of 6 selected commanders, specifically tasked with transporting SS financial operation documents and South American intelligence asset identities. He was to establish a secure communications facility and serve as a relay point for other fugitives arriving by different routes. The Pergamino compound was designated Station Echo, a node in a larger network spanning Argentina, Chile, and Paraguay. The evidence matched perfectly. U-977 departed Kiel on March 24, 4 days after Bormann's order. The ballast discrepancies noted by British intelligence in 1947 were explained by the metal containers, each weighing about 40 kilograms, totaling nearly a ton of cargo in the forward torpedo room. The torn log pages corresponded to entries covering cargo unloading after arrival in Mar del Plata. Hadlitch had removed evidence of what he carried and its destination. The geological surveys and industrial planning documents represented a secondary objective: establishing economic self-sufficiency for the network. Several fugitives with mining and industrial expertise had been relocated to areas near the mineral deposits. The plan was ambitious but largely failed. Most fugitives were captured or died before serious development could begin. The few who survived, like Hadlitch, maintained the network for a few years before it collapsed due to lack of resources and internal conflicts. Dr. Wolf concluded that Action Brücke was a sophisticated contingency plan with limited success. Of the 6 U-boats selected, only 2 reached South America: U-977 and U-530, which surrendered in July 1945. The other 4 were sunk, captured, or scuttled. The network supported perhaps 24 fugitives for 3 to 5 years, but by 1950, most sites were abandoned. The Pergamino compound was sealed in March 1946, suggesting Hadlitch fulfilled his mission and moved on. British suspicions were correct. U-977 carried contraband and established a refuge network, but proof remained elusive due to Hadlitch's caution, Argentine authorities' complicity or negligence, and 1940s technology's inability to detect a buried concrete structure. It took 79 years and a rancher's chainsaw to crack the case. The revelation prompted a reassessment of other U-boat surrenders in South America. U-530's commander, Otto Wermuth, also interrogated and released, had a boat with ballast discrepancies. Argentine investigators are now searching for a second compound, possibly in Patagonia, based on coordinates from the Pergamino documents, a search ongoing as of January 2025. Hadlitch's grandson, Klaus Hadlitch, interviewed in November 2024, stated, "My grandfather never spoke about the war except to repeat his book story. After he died, my grandmother told me he'd had nightmares for years. I always thought it was combat trauma. Now I understand he'd been carrying a much heavier burden." The Pergamino compound is now a protected historical site under Argentina's National Parks Administration, with a reinforced, secured entrance and prohibited public access, though researchers can apply for permits. Documents recovered are digitized and analyzed by an international team, with publication expected in 2026. The metal containers, Enigma machine, and selected artifacts are displayed at the Argentine Naval Museum in Buenos Aires in an exhibit titled The Last Mission. U-977 and the Hidden Network, featuring compound photographs, key document translations, and Hadlitch's uniform. The exhibit text notes. This facility represents the final chapter of Nazi Germany's attempt to survive beyond defeat. It failed, but its existence reminds us that totalitarian regimes plan for contingencies, even their own destruction. Hadlitch lived 37 years after sealing the compound, married, raised children, and worked an ordinary job. To his neighbors, he was just another German immigrant. Yet, twice a year, he drove 8 hours to check on a secret that could never be revealed. When he died in 1982, the secret died with him, or it would have, had a rancher not cleared forest in 2024. The truth traveled 7,500 nautical miles in a U-boat, was buried in Argentine soil for 79 years, and finally surfaced because someone wanted to plant grass for cattle. Sometimes history waits that long.